Table 23? In the back by the kitchen entrance. I stared at my cousin in disbelief. Yes, Avery. The head table is for immediate family only, Tessa said with a practiced smile. But I am family. You know what I mean, real family. It's Paige's special day, and we need to keep things elegant. I glanced toward the grand table where my aunt, uncle, and cousin sat beneath crystal chandeliers. Then I looked down at the contracts in my purse. $287,000 worth of receipts for the venue, catering, flowers, and that $26,000 custom wedding dress Paige was wearing. All paid for by me. The family embarrassment they'd hidden away at table 23. I pulled out my phone and sent a text. I'm about to burn it all down. Welcome back to Pure Revenge Stories, where we share the most jaw-dropping tales of sweet justice served ice cold. To all my loyal subscribers, thank you for being here. Your support means everything. Before we dive in, a quick prayer for you. May your path be clear of those who don't appreciate your worth. May you find the courage to stand tall when others try to diminish you. And may you always recognize your own value, even when those who should love you the most fail to see it. Now, let's get into today's story about family betrayal, hidden generosity, and the most satisfying public revenge that left 200 wedding guests speechless. I was only 8 years old when my mom, Aunt Catherine's younger sister, died in a car accident on a rainy Tuesday evening. I remember standing at her funeral in a black dress that was too big for me, holding a wilted white rose as they lowered her casket into the ground. Aunt Catherine stood beside me, her hand resting on my shoulder, not for comfort, but for appearance. Poor little thing, people whispered. What will happen to her now? The answer came that evening when Uncle Richard and Aunt Catherine sat me down in their pristine living room, the one with furniture no one was allowed to actually sit on. You'll be staying with us now, Avery, Uncle Richard said, his voice clipped and businesslike. We've cleared out the small room in the East Wing for you. The East Wing. As far from the family bedrooms as possible while still technically being in the same house. The message was clear from day one. I was an obligation, not a daughter. The small room turned out to be a converted storage closet with a window hastily added to meet legal requirements. Meanwhile, Paige and Tessa had massive bedrooms with walk-in closets and private bathrooms. My clothes were packed into a single dresser, mostly hand-me-downs from Tessa, who was 2 years older and never let me forget it. Don't stretch out my sweater, she'd warn when forced to give me her cast-offs. And don't tell anyone at school it was mine. Heaven forbid anyone think the Bennett girls shared clothes with their charity case cousin. The patterns were established early. When school picture day came around, Aunt Catherine would schedule professional photo shoots for Paige and Tessa the weekend before. We want good photos for the Christmas cards, she'd explain while handing me exactly enough money for the basic school package, no extras, no retakes. My photos never made it onto the Bennett family Christmas cards. Those featured Aunt Catherine, Uncle Richard, Paige, and Tessa in coordinated outfits, smiling in front of their fireplace or on the beach during their summer vacations. Vacations I was rarely included in. We're going to Europe this summer, Aunt Catherine announced over dinner when I was 12. Paris, Rome, Barcelona. My heart leapt with excitement until she added, Avery, you'll be staying with Mrs. Winters down the street. We've arranged it all. But why can't I come? I asked, my voice small. Uncle Richard barely looked up from his steak. International travel for 5 is expensive, Avery. Be grateful we've found someone to watch you. 5. As if I was an afterthought, a burden, a problem to solve rather than a child to include. Mrs. Winters was 82 and smelled like mothballs. I spent that summer watching soap operas with her while my cousins posted pictures from the Eiffel Tower and the Colosseum. It wasn't just the vacations. It was everything. When Paige needed braces, she got the transparent kind that no one could see. When I needed them a year later, I got metal ones that Uncle Richard complained about constantly. Do you know how much those cost us? He'd say whenever I asked for anything, school supplies, a new winter coat, permission to join a club. The message was constant. I was expensive. A drain on their resources. A charity case. Despite it all, I excelled in school. Not because they encouraged me, but because I realized early on that education was my only ticket out of that house. By 16, I was working part-time jobs after school, babysitting, tutoring, stocking shelves at the local grocery store. I saved every penny, hiding cash in a hollowed-out book on my shelf. When college application time came, Aunt Catherine and Uncle Richard sat Tessa down with a college counselor, reviewing her options with careful consideration. Harvard is a reach, but with your father's connections, you have a solid chance, the counselor assured her. When it was my turn to discuss colleges, Uncle Richard handed me a brochure for the local community college. "This is what we can manage," he said. "You can live at home to save money." I didn't argue. By then, I had nearly $8,000 saved and had secretly applied to several state universities. When my acceptance letter from North Carolina State arrived with a partial scholarship, I waited until everyone was asleep, then called the admissions office to accept. The night I told them I was leaving, Aunt Catherine actually laughed. "And how exactly do you plan to pay for this?" she asked. "Your scholarship doesn't cover everything." "I have savings," I said. "And I've lined up a job in the university bookstore." "We won't be able to help you," Uncle Richard warned. "Not a penny." "I've never expected you to," I replied, and for a brief moment, I saw something flicker across his face. Not regret, exactly. More like surprise that his warnings had no power over me anymore. The day I left for college, no one came to say goodbye. I loaded my few belongings into a used car I'd bought with my savings and drove away without looking back. College was freedom. For the first time, I could make my own choices, forge my own path. I worked nearly full-time while carrying a full course load, determined to graduate without asking the Bennetts for help. I studied computer science and business, recognizing early on that technology was where opportunities lay. During my junior year, I developed a security algorithm that caught the attention of one of my professors. "This has commercial potential, Avery," he told me. "Have you considered starting your own company?" I hadn't, but the idea took root. By senior year, I had partnered with Jason Patterson, another computer science major with complementary skills and similar ambition. After graduation, we took the plunge. Wells and Patterson Security Solutions was born in Jason's garage with 2 laptops and a whiteboard. Our algorithm formed the foundation of a comprehensive security system that protected against emerging cyber threats. The first 2 years were brutal, 18-hour days, ramen noodle dinners, pitching to investors who dismissed us as too young, too inexperienced. But we persevered. In our 3rd year, a major financial institution experienced a devastating data breach that our software could have prevented. Suddenly, investors were calling us. Within 6 months, we secured $5 million in funding. By year 5, our company was valued at $50 million, with clients ranging from Fortune 500 companies to government agencies. Throughout this time, my contact with the Bennetts remained minimal. Obligatory holiday calls. The occasional family event I couldn't politely decline. They knew I was working in computers, as Aunt Catherine vaguely described it, but showed little interest in the details. Some kind of tech startup, she'd tell her friends with a dismissive wave. Very small operation. Even as my company grew, as my name appeared in business publications, as our client list expanded internationally, the Bennetts remained willfully ignorant of my success. Until they needed something. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in my office overlooking the Boston skyline, reviewing quarterly projections with our CFO when my assistant interrupted. "I'm sorry, Ms. Wells, but your cousin Paige is on line 1. She says it's urgent." I excused myself and took the call, expecting the usual family emergency. Someone died, someone's sick, someone needs a character witness for a minor legal trouble. Instead, I heard sobbing. "Paige? What's wrong?" "Everything," she wailed. "My wedding is ruined." Paige had gotten engaged to Bradley Wilson 6 months earlier. Bradley came from old money, banking, real estate, the kind of wealth that had its own Wikipedia page. The engagement announcement had been featured in the society pages, with Aunt Catherine beaming beside the happy couple. What happened? I asked, genuinely concerned despite our history. Bradley's parents, she hiccuped between sobs. They're backing out of funding the wedding. Why? They said it's because Bradley and I should learn financial responsibility, she said bitterly. But really, it's because Mom made a comment about their summer house being quaint compared to the Vanderbilts. Can you believe it? They're worth millions and they're being petty over one comment. I could actually believe it. Aunt Catherine had a talent for offending people while seeming to compliment them. That's unfortunate, I said carefully. But surely you and Uncle Richard can. That's the worst part, Paige cut in, her voice dropping to a whisper. Dad's business is in trouble. Big trouble. The Charleston wedding we've been planning, we can't afford it anymore. This was news to me. Uncle Richard's investment firm had always seemed stable, if not spectacular. He managed money for wealthy families throughout the Southeast, including several prominent Charleston dynasties. What kind of trouble? I asked. I don't know the details. Something about a failed investment and clients pulling their funds. Her voice cracked. He's trying to keep it quiet because if word gets out, he could lose everything. But Avery, we've already booked the Charleston hotel. The deposits are paid. Invitations went out weeks ago. I heard the real fear in her voice. Not just fear of a downsized wedding, but fear of social humiliation, the cardinal sin in the Bennett family. We're going to have to cancel the Charleston hotel and move everything to the country club, she continued. A buffet instead of the 5-course dinner. No string quartet. No custom cocktails. It's going to be so obvious that something's wrong financially. Everyone will talk. I should have felt some satisfaction. After years of the Bennetts flaunting their wealth and status, watching them face financial reality should have been vindicating. Instead, I felt a twinge of sympathy. Not for Uncle Richard or Aunt Catherine, but for Paige. Despite everything, she was still the little girl who'd occasionally snuck me cookies when I was crying in my room. How much is the wedding? I heard myself asking. What? The Charleston hotel wedding. The one you've been planning. What's the total cost? She hesitated. Around $250,000. Maybe a bit more with everything we've selected. Why? $250,000. For one day. It was an obscene amount of money. It was also an amount I could afford. What if I paid for it? The words left my mouth before I could stop them. The line went silent. Avery, that's crazy, Paige finally said. You can't possibly. I can, actually, I replied, suddenly resolute. My company is doing very well. I could cover the wedding costs. Are you serious? Her voice was hushed, hopeful. You would really do that? For me? For her? No. For acceptance? Maybe. For a seat at the table after 26 years on the outside? Possibly. Yes, I said. I'll do it. I'll pay for the wedding. The squeal that came through the phone was so loud I had to hold the receiver away from my ear. Oh my God, Avery. You're saving my life. This is incredible. I can't believe she stopped abruptly. But wait, what about Mom and Dad? What about them? They'd never accept charity, she said. Especially from you. No offense. Full offense taken, I replied dryly. But I understand. We don't have to tell them where the money's coming from. They can pretend it's their wedding gift to you. Yes, that's perfect. The relief in her voice was palpable. They can save face, and I can have my dream wedding. Oh, Avery, I don't know how to thank you. Just remember who made it possible, I said. Of course. I'll never forget this. Never. Her voice turned conspiratorial. But let's keep this between us, okay? Mom and Dad would be embarrassed if people knew you were paying. I agreed, though something cold settled in my stomach at her words. Even in accepting my generosity, they needed to keep me in the shadows. The next day, I met with Paige and the wedding planner at the Charleston Hotel. Vivian Monroe, the hotel's event manager, guided us through the elegant spaces where the wedding would take place. We were concerned when we heard rumors about potential cancellation, Vivian confessed. The Bennett Wilson wedding is our showcase event of the season. There will be no cancellation, I assured her. I'll be taking over the financial arrangements from this point forward. Vivian's professional smile never wavered as she handed me the contract folder. Of course, Ms. Wells. We'll need to update our records. All expenses will now be billed to you directly. Yes, and I'd appreciate your discretion in this matter. Absolutely, Vivian nodded. Client confidentiality is paramount at the Charleston. As we toured the grand ballroom with its soaring ceilings and crystal chandeliers, Paige clutched my arm. This is where the reception will be, she whispered excitedly. Can't you just picture it? The flowers cascading from the ceiling, the custom dance floor, the ice sculpture. Ice sculpture? I asked. We're deciding between a swan and an angel, the wedding planner interjected. The angel would be more unique, but the swan is classic Charleston. Go with the angel, I suggested. If you're spending this much, might as well be unique. Over the next 5 months, I signed off on an endless stream of expenses. The custom-designed invitations on hand-pressed paper, the rare orchids flown in from Thailand for the centerpieces, the vintage champagne for the toast, the celebrity chef brought in from New York, and the dress. Dear God, the dress. It's Vera Wang, Paige explained during a final fitting I'd been invited to. Custom designed. No one else will have anything like it. At $26,000, I should hope not. The expenses mounted. $42,000 for the venue. $68,000 for the catering. $35,000 for flowers. $12,000 for the band. $18,000 for the photographer and videographer. By the time all was said and done, the total had reached $287,000. Each time I signed a check or approved a credit card charge, I told myself this was an investment. Not in the wedding itself, but in finally being accepted by the family that had kept me at arm's length for 26 years. Surely, after this, they would see me differently. Surely, after this, I would have earned my place. 1 week before the wedding, I received a call from Aunt Catherine. Avery, darling, she said, her voice dripping with unusual warmth. I wanted to personally thank you for attending Paige's wedding. I know how busy you are with your little company. My little company that was currently finalizing a $30 million government contract. I wouldn't miss it, I replied. Wonderful. The ceremony begins at 4, but family should arrive by 3 for photos. Family. The word sent a hopeful flutter through me. I'll be there at 3, I promised. Perfect. And Avery? We've arranged a special seat for you at the reception. A special seat. Maybe this was it, the acknowledgement I'd been waiting for. Maybe the $287,000 wedding gift was finally opening doors that had been closed to me for decades. That's very thoughtful, I said, genuinely touched. Of course, darling. Your family, after all. As I hung up, I allowed myself to imagine it, sitting at the head table with Aunt Catherine, Uncle Richard, Tessa, and Paige. Being introduced to Bradley's wealthy relatives as our niece, the successful tech entrepreneur. Being included, at last, in family photos without being relegated to the edge where I could be easily cropped out. I spent an absurd amount on my own outfit for the wedding, a designer dress in deep blue that complemented my dark hair and fair skin. I had my makeup and hair professionally done. I splurged on new shoes, a designer clutch. For once, I wouldn't be the family embarrassment. I would look like I belonged. The morning of the wedding, I received a text from Jason. Good luck today. Remember, blood doesn't always make family. I smiled at his concern. Jason had witnessed enough Bennett family dynamics over the years to be wary. Thanks, but I think things are changing, I replied. Aunt Catherine actually called me family yesterday. His response was immediate. People say a lot of things when someone's paying their bills. I ignored his cynicism and focused on getting ready. Whatever happened today, I had done something extraordinary for Paige. I had made her dream wedding possible. Surely that counted for something in the complicated calculus of family acceptance. By the time I arrived at the Charleston Hotel for photos, the transformation was complete. The historic building had been draped in white silk and twinkling lights. Floral arrangements adorned every surface. Staff members bustled about, attending to last-minute details that I had paid for. As I made my way to the bridal suite, I passed Vivian in the hallway. "Everything looks beautiful," I told her. "Thanks to your generosity, Ms. Wells," she replied with a knowing smile. "I've never seen a wedding quite like this one. The final checks all cleared, by the way. Thank you for handling everything so discreetly." She nodded. "Of course. Though I must say, it's unusual for someone to fund an entire wedding of this magnitude and not receive any recognition." I shrugged, unwilling to explain the complicated dynamics at play. "It's a family matter." "Indeed," she said, her expression thoughtful. "Well, if you need anything today, anything at all, please don't hesitate to ask. We're at your service." Little did I know how significant that offer would become in just a few hours. The wedding ceremony was picture perfect. Paige looked radiant in her custom Vera Wang gown as she floated down the aisle. Aunt Catherine dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. Uncle Richard beamed proudly. The string quartet played Pachelbel's canon flawlessly. The rare orchids adorning the altar caught the late afternoon sunlight streaming through stained glass windows. I sat in the fourth row, not with the immediate family in the front, but close enough to feel included. During family photos afterward, I was positioned on the edge of group shots, but not excluded entirely. It felt like progress. As guests moved from the ceremony to the cocktail hour, I mingled, accepting compliments on my dress and deflecting questions about my company with practiced modesty. Several times, I overheard snippets of conversation about the extravagance of the event. "Richard must be doing better than ever," one older gentleman commented to his wife. "This wedding must have cost a fortune." "Catherine has outdone herself," another guest remarked. "The attention to detail is extraordinary." I sipped my champagne and said nothing, watching as Uncle Richard accepted congratulations on his generosity and Aunt Catherine basked in compliments about her impeccable taste. When it came time for the reception, a staff member approached with a seating chart. Guests consulted the elegant calligraphy to find their assigned tables. I scanned the chart, looking for my name near the head table. Table 23. I blinked, certain I had misread. But no, there it was. Avery Wells, table 23. I turned to the staff member. "There must be a mistake. I'm family." "I'm sorry, ma'am, but this is the final seating chart approved by Mrs. Bennett this morning." I stood frozen, the noise of the gathering fading as I processed this information. Table 23 was in the far corner of the ballroom, practically hidden behind a massive floral arrangement, adjacent to the swinging doors that led to the kitchen. "Avery? What are you doing just standing there?" Tessa approached, her bridesmaid dress flowing around her. The reception started. "I was looking for my seat," I said, still staring at the chart. Tessa's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, you're at table 23. In the back, near the kitchen entrance." "Table 23? I repeated. "But I'm family too." "The head table is for immediate family only," Tessa explained with practiced sympathy. "Mom's orders. You understand, don't you? It's Paige's special day and we need to keep it elegant." Elegant. The word hung between us, the implication clear. I wasn't elegant enough. Not important enough. Not really family. "Of course," I said, swallowing my hurt. "I understand." I made my way to table 23, where I found myself seated with distant relatives no one cared to place elsewhere and staff members from Uncle Richard's company who couldn't be excluded, but weren't important enough for better placement. "Quite the affair, isn't it?" The older woman beside me commented. "I'm Margaret, Richard's aunt." "And you are?" "Avery, Lily's daughter." Recognition flickered in her eyes. "Ah, yes. The niece they took in. How charitable of them." My phone buzzed with a text from Jason. "Everything okay?" I texted back. "They put me at the reject table. No one knows I paid for everything." His response was immediate. "That's messed up." "What are you going to do?" "What indeed?" I watched as Uncle Richard rose to give a speech, champagne flute in hand. "Catherine and I wanted to give our beautiful daughter the perfect wedding," he announced, voice thick with false emotion. No expense spared for our princess. The guests applauded. Aunt Catherine dabbed at non-existent tears. This day represents everything we value as a family, Uncle Richard continued. Beauty, tradition, excellence, and above all, loyalty. Loyalty. The word struck me like a physical blow. I had been loyal. I had paid for their daughter's dream wedding. I had kept their financial troubles secret. I had played along with the fiction that they were the generous ones, the tasteful ones, the ones deserving of admiration. And my reward was table 23. The realization crystallized with perfect clarity. Nothing would ever be enough. No amount of money, success, or generosity would earn me a place at their table. The goalposts would always move. The door would always remain just slightly ajar, enough to keep me hoping, but never enough to let me through. Something snapped inside me. 26 years of being pushed aside, being told I wasn't good enough, being made to feel grateful for scraps of attention. I texted Jason, "I'm about to burn it all down." Then I called Vivian, the hotel manager, who'd worked closely with me on all the arrangements. "It's time," I said when she answered. "Bring the paperwork." "Are you certain, Ms. Wells?" she asked, her voice careful. "Once this is done." "I'm certain," I replied. "It's time for the truth." 10 minutes later, Vivian appeared at my table with a leather portfolio. "Everything's ready, Ms. Wells," she said loud enough for nearby guests to hear. As I stood, Margaret looked at me curiously. "Where are you going, dear?" I smiled, a calm settling over me. "To claim my seat." I walked across the ballroom, Vivian beside me, feeling every eye turn in our direction. The string quartet finished their song, creating a perfect lull in the celebration. "Excuse me," I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. "I need to address something." Uncle Richard's face darkened. "Avery, this isn't the time." "Actually, it's exactly the time." I turned to face the gathered guests. "I want to congratulate my cousin Paige on her beautiful wedding. Truly, it's stunning." Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. "I especially love the ice sculpture," I continued. "It was between the swan and the angel, but I think we made the right choice with the angel, don't you?" Aunt Catherine's face drained of color. "What are you talking about?" "Oh, didn't they tell you?" I asked innocently. "I paid for this entire wedding. Every centerpiece, every champagne bubble, every bite of that $200 per plate dinner you're enjoying." The ballroom fell silent. All eyes darted between me and the head table. "Avery, stop this nonsense immediately," Uncle Richard hissed. I nodded to Vivian, who opened the portfolio and handed me the contracts. "These are the contracts for today's event," I announced. "You'll notice my signature on every page, my credit card on every receipt." I walked slowly toward the head table, laying down each document as I spoke. The venue, $42,000. The catering, $68,000. The flowers, $35,000. The dress, I paused, looking directly at Paige, whose face had gone pale, $26,000, custom designed. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. "Avery, please," Aunt Catherine pleaded. "This is Paige's day." "Yes, it is," I agreed. "A day she couldn't have had if I hadn't paid for it. A day where you still decided I wasn't good enough to sit with family. Where you hid me away at table 23 because, even though my money was good enough, I wasn't." Uncle Richard stood abruptly. "This is outrageous. I paid for this wedding." "Did you?" I asked calmly. "That's strange, because according to the hotel's records," I gestured to Vivian, who nodded confirmation, "every payment came from me. Not a single dollar from you." The whispers grew louder. Phones emerged as guests began recording. "Why are you doing this?" Paige cried, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "Because for 26 years, I've been part of this family without ever being treated like family," I replied, my voice steady despite the emotion churning inside. "I paid for your dream wedding hoping it might finally earn me a place at the table. Instead, you hid me away and took credit for my generosity." I turned to the guests. "The truth is the Bennetts are broke. Uncle Richard's company is failing. They couldn't afford this wedding, so they came to me, the niece they've always treated as an embarrassment, to bail them out. That's a lie. Uncle Richard shouted, his face purple with rage. Is it? I pulled out my phone and played a recording of Paige's tearful call, her voice crystal clear as she begged for my help. Dad's business is in trouble. Big trouble. The Charleston wedding we've been planning, we can't afford it anymore. The recording continued, documenting every desperate word. When I reached the part where Paige said, "But let's keep this between us, okay? Mom and Dad would be embarrassed if people knew you were paying," several guests audibly gasped. The ballroom erupted in chaos. Paige sobbed into her husband's shoulder. Tessa stared at me with hatred. Aunt Catherine seemed to shrink in her chair. "Ms. Wells," Vivian interjected, "as per your instructions, we've prepared the alternative." I nodded. "Thank you, Vivian. Since it's clear I'm not welcome at this family celebration despite funding it, I've made other arrangements." On cue, the ballroom doors opened to reveal waitstaff rolling in carts laden with boxes. "These are the wedding favors I selected, Tiffany crystal paperweights for each guest, engraved with today's date." I smiled at the shocked faces around me. Inside each box is a card explaining exactly who paid for this wedding, along with copies of the receipts. "You can't do this," Uncle Richard growled, grabbing my arm. "I already have." I pulled free. "And one more thing, since I own this event, I'm changing the seating arrangement." I walked to table 23 and picked up my place card. Then I returned to the head table and set it down right in the center. "I paid for this wedding," I said. "I deserve a seat at this table." I sat down in the empty chair beside the bride, smoothing my dress as I did so. The entire room watched in stunned silence. "Enjoy the rest of the celebration," I said, raising my champagne glass. After all, I paid for it. Bradley's father, a distinguished-looking man in his 60s, broke the silence with a slow, deliberate clap. "Well done, young lady," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "Well done indeed." Uncle Richard turned to him, desperate. "Frank, this isn't what it looks like." "Oh, I think it's exactly what it looks like, Richard." Frank Wilson's tone was icy. "You lied about your financial situation. You took credit for your niece's extraordinary generosity. And when she asked for nothing but inclusion in return, you relegated her to the servants' table." "She's exaggerating," Aunt Catherine tried. "Family dynamics are complicated." "Not that complicated, Catherine." Frank's wife joined in. "Our family has its share of disagreements, but we don't treat each other like this." Bradley stood up, his expression pained as he looked between his new wife and his parents. "Did you know about this?" he asked Paige. She couldn't meet his eyes. I didn't think she'd actually tell anyone." "So you knew," he said flatly. "You knew your cousin paid for everything, and you still let her be treated like this." "It's not what you think," Paige protested. "Mom and Dad said." "I don't care what they said," Bradley cut her off. "This isn't how I was raised. This isn't the family I thought I was marrying into." Tessa, always quick to deflect blame, pointed at me. "This is your fault. You've ruined everything." "No, Tessa," I replied calmly. "I didn't ruin anything. I simply told the truth." One by one, guests began approaching the head table, not to console the Bennetts, but to speak to me. "Your aunt and I went to college together," one woman said. "I always wondered why she rarely mentioned you. Now I understand." "I'm on the board at First National," a distinguished gentleman told me. "We should talk about your company's security solutions. I've heard impressive things." "You handled this with remarkable grace," an elderly woman commented. "Most people would have exposed them long before now." Throughout it all, I remained composed, accepting their words with quiet dignity while the Bennetts' perfect facade crumbled around them. Uncle Richard made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. Standing up, he tapped his glass for attention. "Friends, family, there's been a misunderstanding. Of course we knew Avery was contributing to the wedding. It was meant to be her gift to Paige. We're grateful for her assistance." I didn't need to contradict him. The damage was done. His words rang hollow in the face of the evidence I'd presented and the recording everyone had heard. As the reception continued in awkward fits and starts, staff began distributing the crystal paperweights. Guests opened them, reading the enclosed cards with wide eyes. Some approached me to shake my hand. Others gave the Bennets wide berth, as if their fall from grace might be contagious. Bradley's mother eventually sat down beside me, her expression thoughtful. "You know," she said quietly, "we didn't back out of funding the wedding because of Catherine's comment about our summer house. No. We backed out because in the 20 years we've known the Bennets, we've watched how they treated you. When Paige told us they were asking for money while continuing to exclude you from family events." She shook her head. "We decided it was time they faced reality." I stared at her, stunned. "You knew about me?" "Of course we knew. Our families have moved in the same circles for decades. We've seen you at the edges of photos, seated at distant tables, never quite included." She patted my hand. "Frank and I always wondered when you'd stop accepting their treatment. I'm glad it was today." As the night wore on, the Bennets retreated into themselves, huddled at the end of the head table like survivors of a shipwreck. Their social currency, built on appearances and pretension, had been completely devalued in a single evening. Meanwhile, I sat at the center of the table that had been denied to me for 26 years, accepting congratulations on my success, my generosity, and most satisfyingly, my poise under pressure. The sweet taste of champagne was nothing compared to the sweeter taste of justice. The remainder of the reception unfolded like a slow-motion train wreck. Guests clustered in small groups, whispering behind hands and throwing furtive glances at both me and the Bennets. The 5-course meal was served with mechanical precision, the staff maintaining their professionalism despite the palpable tension in the room. Paige and Bradley had their first dance, though it looked more like a funeral march than a celebration. Tessa delivered her maid of honor speech with a fixed smile that never reached her eyes. Uncle Richard drank heavily, loosening his tie as the evening progressed. Aunt Catherine maintained her rigid posture, but barely touched her food or champagne. By 9 o'clock, guests were leaving in droves, offering hurried congratulations to the newlyweds before making their escapes. The lavish party scheduled to last until midnight was effectively over by 10. As I prepared to leave, Vivian approached me. "Your car is waiting at the side entrance, Ms. Wells. I thought you might prefer a discreet exit." I nodded gratefully. "Thank you for everything, Vivian." She smiled. "It was my pleasure. And between us, I've worked hundreds of weddings, but I've never seen anything quite like this evening." Some of these society people needed a reality check. As I gathered my things, Bradley's father intercepted me. "Ms. Wells, Frank Wilson." He extended his hand. "I wanted to thank you before you left." "Thank me?" I asked, surprised. "For showing us exactly who the Bennets are. Better now than after years of family holidays." He lowered his voice. "I've already spoken with Bradley. When they return from the honeymoon, we'll be having a frank discussion about their living arrangements. The penthouse we purchased for them might need to be reconsidered." "I'm sorry if I've caused problems for Paige and Bradley," I said, not entirely meaning it. Frank shook his head. "Marriages survive on truth, not illusions. If they can weather this, they'll be stronger for it." By the time I reached my hotel room, video clips of my confrontation were already spreading across social media. A friend from college texted me a link to a TikTok that had already garnered 50,000 views in just 2 hours. The footage showed me laying down contracts, revealing the exact costs, playing the recorded call, and finally placing my name card at the center of the head table. The caption read, #Wedding Revenge Woman Exposes Family, Who Made Her Sit at Reject Table After She Paid $287,000 for the Entire Wedding. By morning, the story had exploded. Local news stations picked it up first, then national outlets. Wedding drama goes viral. Woman exposes family's financial lies ran as a headline on a morning show. Social media commenters dissected every detail, overwhelmingly siding with me. The look on the aunt's face when she played that recording. Priceless. Anyone notice how the mother kept trying to shush her? Like, girl, your secret's already out. Table 23 needs to be a new code for, you've pushed me too far. I received calls from 3 different morning shows requesting interviews. Jason, ever the protective business partner, fielded them all with polite declines. You don't need to explain yourself to strangers, he told me over breakfast in my hotel room. You've said everything that needed saying. The Bennetts, meanwhile, were in full damage control mode. Uncle Richard issued a statement through his company's PR firm claiming there had been a misunderstanding about the wedding finances. While we appreciate our niece's contribution to our daughter's special day, her characterization of events was unfortunately distorted by emotion. The Bennett family has always valued inclusion and generosity. The statement backfired spectacularly when someone leaked photos of previous family events showing me consistently placed at distant tables or cropped from family photos. By afternoon, Uncle Richard's largest clients had scheduled emergency meetings to discuss their investments. The whispers of his company's financial troubles, once contained to insider circles, were now public knowledge. His carefully cultivated reputation for financial acumen was in tatters. Aunt Catherine's social standing collapsed overnight. 3 charity boards she sat on requested her temporary resignation. Her weekly lunch group suddenly had scheduling conflicts. The country club locker room fell silent when she entered. Paige and Bradley's honeymoon photos, posted from the Maldives in an attempt at normalcy, received comments that ranged from sympathetic to scathing. Hope the marriage lasts longer than the reception. Does your cousin have to pay for this trip too? Table 23 sends their regards. The day after the wedding, as I was checking out of my hotel, I received a text from Tessa. You've destroyed us. Are you happy now? I considered ignoring it, but something compelled me to respond. I didn't destroy anything, I wrote back. I simply told the truth. Her reply came instantly. Mom and Dad took you in when no one else would. You owed them loyalty. I felt a familiar spark of anger, but this time it was followed by clarity rather than hurt. They took me in and treated me like a burden for 26 years, I responded. I owed them nothing. As I boarded my flight back to Boston, I turned off my phone, shutting out the continuing avalanche of notifications, messages, and news alerts. For the first time in years, perhaps ever, I felt unburdened by the weight of seeking the Bennetts' approval. I had finally stopped waiting for a seat at a table that would never have room for me. The weeks following the wedding brought a steady stream of fallout. The Bennetts' carefully constructed facade crumbled like a sandcastle at high tide, revealing the financial and social rot beneath. 1 week after the wedding, Uncle Richard's largest client, Hartwick Industries, pulled their $50 million portfolio from his management. 3 more followed within days. The whispers of trouble became a roar of crisis. 10 days after the wedding, I received a call from Aunt Catherine. I let it go to voicemail. Avery, her voice wavered between anger and desperation. Richard's company is collapsing. We might lose the house. Surely you don't want that. I listened to the message twice before calling her back. What I wanted was to be treated like family, I said when she answered. What I got was table 23. You're being childish, she snapped, her desperation giving way to familiar condescension. One little slight, and you expose family business to the world? One little slight? I repeated incredulously. You've been slighting me for 26 years, Catherine. Table 23 was just the final insult. We gave you everything, she insisted. A home and education. You gave me a converted closet and refused to help with college. I put myself through school working 3 jobs. We took you in when no one else would, she tried again, her voice breaking. And you've been making me pay for it ever since. I paused, letting the truth of those words settle between us. The difference now is I'm done paying. I hung up as she began another protest. 2 weeks after the wedding, Paige called from her honeymoon. Her voice was small, stripped of its usual confidence. Why did you do it? She asked. Why did you agree to pay if you were just going to expose us? The question caught me off guard. After a moment's reflection, I answered honestly. I paid because I thought it would finally make me family, I admitted. I exposed you because I realized money couldn't buy what was never for sale. Her silence spoke volumes. Are you and Bradley okay? I asked, surprising myself with the genuine concern in my voice. I don't know, she said quietly. His parents want him to get an annulment. They say I deceived him about our family situation. Did you? Another long pause. I didn't tell him how bad Dad's business was. I didn't tell him you were paying for everything. That's deception by omission, Paige. I know, she whispered. I just wanted everything to be perfect. Nothing is ever perfect, I told her. Especially things built on lies. After we hung up, I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and sadness. The satisfaction of finally speaking truth to the family that had diminished me for so long. The sadness of realizing that even now, they couldn't see how their actions had led to this moment. 3 weeks after the wedding, Bennett Investment Strategies announced a strategic restructuring, corporate speak for massive layoffs. Uncle Richard's office space was downsized from a prestigious downtown location to a small suite in a suburban office park. The mansion where I'd spent my childhood was quietly listed for sale. The asking price was well below market value, suggesting urgency. Tess's engagement to the son of a prominent judge was called off. No explanation was given, but Charleston society buzzed with rumors that his family had concerns about the Bennett's true financial situation and reputation. A month after the wedding, I received my first communication from Uncle Richard, a text message that simply read, "We need help. Family helps family." I didn't respond. Instead, I made a donation to a foundation supporting orphaned children, $287,000, the exact cost of the wedding. The accompanying note read, "In honor of finding your own family when the one you're given fails you." 6 weeks after the wedding, the business section of the Boston Globe featured a profile of Wells and Patterson Security Solutions. The article highlighted our innovative approach to cybersecurity and our growing client list. It mentioned the viral wedding video only briefly, noting that I declined to discuss personal matters. What the article emphasized instead was our company's commitment to supporting foster children and orphans through technology education programs and scholarship funds. The morning the article was published, Jason placed a copy on my desk along with my favorite coffee. "Look at that," he said, pointing to a sidebar that listed me among 40 under 40 tech innovators to watch. Not bad for someone the Bennetts thought would never amount to anything. I smiled, running my fingers over the glossy page. It was never about proving them wrong, you know. No. It was about proving to myself that I was right all along, that I deserved better than what they gave me. 2 months after the wedding, the Bennett's mansion was sold at a significant loss. They moved into a modest condo, a dramatic downsize from the home where they'd hosted society parties and charity galas. Paige and Bradley separated, their honeymoon photos the last public evidence of their union. Bradley returned to his family's estate in Connecticut. Paige moved back in with her parents, her dream wedding now a nightmare memory viral on the internet. Uncle Richard's company continued its downward spiral, hemorrhaging clients who no longer trusted his financial judgment. By the 3-month mark, he was facing multiple lawsuits from former clients alleging misrepresentation and breach of fiduciary duty. I watched it all from a distance, neither gloating nor intervening. Their collapse was entirely of their own making. I had simply removed the facade they'd hidden behind for decades. Meanwhile, my life expanded in unexpected ways. Freed from the emotional drain of seeking approval from people determined never to give it, I focused on building connections with those who valued me for exactly who I was. Jason and I expanded our business internationally, opening offices in London and Singapore. I started a foundation specifically dedicated to helping adopted and foster children pursue careers in technology. I bought a beautiful brownstone in Boston's Back Bay and filled it with friends, colleagues, and laughter. 6 months after the wedding, I received a final text from Uncle Richard, "We're losing everything. Please help." This time, I wrote back, "You never lost me. I was right here all along, waiting for a place at your table." Now you've lost the table, but I've found my place. 1 year after the wedding that changed everything, I stood in the offices of Wells and Patterson, now occupying the top floor of a sleek high-rise overlooking Boston Harbor. Our company had tripled in size, with new contracts from Fortune 500 companies and government agencies around the world. More importantly, the Avery Wells Foundation for Technology Education had already provided scholarships to 57 foster children and adoptees, giving them opportunities one had fought so hard for myself. On my desk sat the morning newspaper with a small item buried in the business section. Bennett Investment Strategies declares bankruptcy, assets to be liquidated. The final chapter in Uncle Richard's financial downfall. I felt no triumph, no vindication, just a quiet acknowledgement that actions have consequences. The Bennetts had built their lives on appearances, on pretending to be something they weren't. When that foundation crumbled, they had nothing left to stand on. Jason placed a cup of coffee on my desk. "Penny for your thoughts?" "I was just thinking about family," I said. "The one we're born into versus the one we choose. And I think I finally understand that blood doesn't make family. Respect does. Love does. A seat at the table does." Jason nodded. "Speaking of tables, the team is waiting in the conference room. Ready to announce the new Tokyo office?" I smiled. "Lead the way." As we walked through the bustling office, I reflected on how different this family felt, colleagues who valued my input, friends who celebrated my successes, people who made room for me without being asked. My phone buzzed with a text from Paige. I found a job. Nothing fancy, just reception work at a law firm. But it's a start. After the divorce, Paige had struggled to rebuild her life without the financial support of her parents or ex-husband. Initially, I'd ignored her attempts to reconnect, but over time, I'd softened enough to offer occasional advice. I texted back, "Proud of you. First steps are always the hardest." Her response was immediate. "I never thanked you properly. Not for the wedding, that was a disaster. But for showing me the truth about our family, about myself." I needed that wake-up call. It was the closest thing to an apology I'd received from any of the Bennetts. As I entered the conference room filled with my team, people who respected me, valued me, chose me day after day, I realized that the revenge I'd taken at the wedding wasn't just about exposing the Bennetts. It was about finally exposing the truth to myself, that I deserved better than Table 23. In the end, the Bennetts had taught me an invaluable lesson. Family isn't about blood or legal obligations. It's about respect, love, and a seat at the table. They had denied me those things while happily taking my money. But in losing their approval, I had gained something far more precious, the freedom to build a life surrounded by people who made room for me without being asked, who valued me without conditions, who gave me a seat at every table that mattered. And that was the purest form of justice.